Alright, since my sew up of the Palm Springs is strapless, I'm gonna have this little video of how to do the straps. You're gonna have two strap pieces and we're gonna sew them right sides together along the long side, creating the long tubes that will be our straps. I always suggest starting off and ending with a pin instead of a clip. Just makes it slightly more accurate if you're trying to keep those edges perfectly in line. We're going to serge up along this long seam here on each strap with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. These straps are made to go with 3/4 inch swim elastic. It has a teeny tiny bit of ease besides the 3/4. It has 1/8 of an inch extra, which when folded in half is really only 1/16 on each side. Just allows for a little bit of the width of the elastic to take up some of that room, and then just a teeny tiny bit of ease if you cut it out not perfectly, or if you don't keep to your seam allowance perfectly. It should be tight enough that your elastic isn't wanting to twist at all though. I prefer a super tight casing. Sometimes I even have 0 ease in my casing, meaning the fabric has to stretch around any kind of width it has, or thickness that it may have. I get some complaints when I do that though, that it's too tight, so I put in a teeny tiny bit in this one. After we've stitched down, you can do a light pressing. If you're doing nylon spandex, be careful to only use a synthetic heat setting on your iron so you don't melt your nylon. I do still press my swim knit though. Just make sure you're using the correct setting on your iron, nothing too high. You can even use a pressing cloth, but just make sure you grab one of those scraps when you're cutting it out, and just test out your iron settings before you hit your main pieces with it. Now you're going to grab your favorite turning tool. Mine is this tube turner, and turn your straps. These are wide enough that you could probably get away with just using a safety pin as well if you don't have any kind of turning tool. They're not too narrow, and the stretchy fabric always makes it a little bit easier too. This tube turner I used to have one from Nancy's Notions years ago, and it was the best ever. Can't really remember what happened to it now, but they're really hard to find now. Nancy's Notions doesn't sell them anymore, and hasn't for years and years. I finally found this one on Amazon, but it's a really poor quality. The little screw at the bottom that holds it together is really loose, and so my two ends don't meet perfectly every time. As you can see, I'm trying to like hold the ends together, but also they made it to where you cannot tighten the screw. There's nothing there to tighten, so it is what it is. If anybody has a really high quality one of these that are still available to purchase, let me know. I'd really like a nicer quality one like I used to have from Nancy's Notions. This one still works okay, but it is kind of frustrating that it doesn't work as great as my old one. Now you're going to take any kind of feeding tool. I'm going to use a bodkin here, or just a big old safety pin is fine too. And we're going to feed our strap elastic into our straps. They should be the same length, so you shouldn't need to stretch either one. You can either keep your seam at the center back of your strap, or you can keep it on the very edge, whatever you prefer the look of. I like it on the center back. That's how I do all of mine. There's no right or wrong way here, just whatever you like the look of. Once you get the elastic lined up at both edges, just baste them in place so you don't do what I just did on accident and misalign them while you're working with it. Luckily, they're the same length, so even if you accidentally pull it a little too hard, it's not too much work to get it out the other side again. And see, I'm throwing a pin in so that I don't do it again. But you can always wait as well to smooth out your elastic until you're done basting each end as well. I just use a small 1/8 inch seam allowance to baste them. I do make sure my seam is kind of down the center back, nice and straight all the way down. Even though I'm not going to top stitch it, you can top stitch these if you want. If you're worried about the elastic sliding around, or you just like the look of it, the feel of it, you can top stitch these down the center, down each side, whatever you like the look of. Just again basting along each edge so that they don't move around when we are attaching them to the swimsuit. Okay, now our straps are all ready to be attached to the swimsuit. When you get to that step, which is you have your top band pinned to your main swimsuit, so that's what I'm finishing up right here. Then we're going to also baste our straps to each notch. I'm doing the low back here, so mine are going to crisscross in the back. If you're doing the high back, they are meant to just go straight back. So with right sides together, we're just going to pin the edge of our strap to the edge of the band and the top raw edge of the swimsuit. Pin it in place, and then we're going to baste it in place. These straps are a little thick with the elastic, but I really like the feel of the thick elastic in the straps. It's super secure. If you have a big, heavy bust, you will find these so much more comfortable than the little skinny ones. I like the look of the little skinny ones too, but if I am actually running around chasing my kids, these nice, thicker straps are so much more comfortable and more supportive of the bust. So to me, it's worth the bulky seam right here. One thing you can do at these little sections is put some knit interfacing where you attach the straps. So you can put it on your main swimsuit and your lining swimsuit, just a little rectangle that's going to cover the seam allowance plus a little bit more all around the edges. Knit, and you just want to be careful ironing it on, again, because a lot of nylon spandex will melt at a high heat. Just use a lower heat like you do the rest of the time. Press on that little rectangle at all 4 notches on both the main and the lining, and that's just going to help kind of hold it nice and stable, because the straps are fitted and tight and stable, and so they tug up the swimsuit right there. If you want to minimize that, add some knit interfacing. As you can see, I didn't do that. I don't mind that it tugs up at the straps, but if I have a fabric that I think doesn't have that much spandex, maybe it's going to tug them a ton to where it looks almost pointy, you can add some knit interfacing there. So I'm just basting them along the top edge here. I highly suggest slipping your swimsuit on at this point. You can also baste around the total top so you're not trying it on with pins. And just test out the strap length. Strap length is something that can really, really vary on personal preference. Some people like them super tight, pulling that bust up as far and tight as they can. They don't mind if it kind of pulls the swimsuit, tugs on their shoulders. Other people want them just barely there, not tugging the swimsuit, not feeling any pressure on their shoulders. So it's a really wide preference there on how tight you want the straps. So slip it on, see how they feel. If they feel a little too tight, now's your chance. You can either take a smaller seam allowance, or you can just redo the straps a little bit longer. If they feel a little bit loose, now's your chance to trim them down, take a little bit off. Make them fit you just how you like. Now we're just going to add on our lining, right sides of the lining to the right side of your main fabric. It'll be this to the straps wrong side. And you're just going to pin all the way around. Your lining should be exactly the same as your main fabric. So line up all those notches and just pin, pin, pin. I suggest basting this because this is a lot of layers to sew through, and swim fabric is very slippery. So once you have it all pinned, go ahead and baste around the entire top except for that little section we left open on the top band. You want to leave the same little section open on this step as well. That's what we're going to feed the elastic through for the top band, and then we'll be done. I'm going to speed this next part up because if you watch the complete sew up, this is exactly the same as the strapless version. You just have your straps tucked in there. It's the only difference. So I'm going to speed up this part so it's not too boring. Okay, finishing up this top band, and now we can flip it right sides out and see our straps all done. You can top stitch the seam allowance between the band and the swimsuit. Again, depending on how tight your straps are, it can tug up the swimsuit. If you want to stabilize that, top stitching is a great choice. If you don't like the look of top stitching but you still want to stabilize these straps, you can also understitch, meaning pull out the lining and stitch the seam allowance just to the lining all the way around. Acts like a top stitch, but it's hidden just on the underneath. I can't wait to see your Palm Springs swimsuits. Don't forget to tag me and let me cheer you on.